Conscience I represent, and this is Star Life. See me I say? Mad.
This is the king of fire, keep it lock it down with Star Life, keep the fire burning, more fire.
Yeah, sweet cocoa piece. Log on to StarLifeDH pt1. We have everything around. Now we run dancehall business about ya. StarLifeDH.com. Come on. See them, keep it locked.
All right. Mega Man here with www.starlifedancehall.com, and we have the privilege right now of interviewing somebody who has been in the reggae industry for many, many, many years, who has worked with some of the most legendary producers and who has produced some of the most prolific music. Right now it's no other than Mr. Singing Melody himself. Mr. Melody, how are you doing today?
I'm great, man. I'm great, and thanks for having me. You know, such a short notice. No, not a short notice, a long notice, because we've been talking. But I'm very grateful to be here because, you know, the flight came in, everything was smooth, you know, and we landed safely, and, you know, we were blessed to be here, you know. Yeah, man.
One of the things I noticed about you as an artist, you have been very humble, and at the same time you've been very approachable and things of that nature. As somebody who has traveled the world, who has done so much music and worked with so many great artists and has done so much in the music, how do you maintain such a balance and such composure with people?
Well, I would say first it starts from you as a person, you know, I mean, the way you grew up and, you know, the lessons that you were taught, you know. I grew up very humbly. My mom and my dad, you know, my dad passed when I was 9 years old, so it was my mom. And she instilled every bit of things and discipline that she could, you know, for us, because she knows that she didn't have that extra help, you know. And we were from communities that raised kids, you know, because these days there's no community raising kids. It's just kids raising kids, or just individual raising kids. But, you know, for a kid to be well-rounded, you definitely need a village to raise that child. And I was brought up in that kind of environment where it was ghetto style, you know, music was around and everything, but the discipline was a must that we have to have. So the composure and, you know, all of that, I think it's really comes from a humble beginning. I learned to appreciate people more than anything else in the world, you know. That's the kind of love that I have, you know, for what I do and the people, most of all, you know.
You speak, you know, about you growing up and things of that nature. What village raised you? And in addition to that, at what point in your youth did you get introduced to music? Both of those, a compound question.
Well, the first one, I come from a humble community called 125 Spanish Town Road. That's Kingston 8, I think it is. And that is from the era of the sound system called Volcano High Power, with Henry John Jolas, the great producer. There's several other producers from there, artists like Little John, back in those days, original Little John, not the other one, you know, Tyan and all those guys, the Linja. You know, and my community was basically like a musical community. This is where everything happens every day, music 24/7, you know, but yet still we go to school, and then when we come back from school and we finish homework, it was just music. So the whole community was that kind of energy. And from there, there's not far down the road, we have Maxfield Avenue where Studio One is, you know, so my community was not far, it was not even 2 miles, you know, long. So, and it was all music and just one surrounding area. So that's the community I was raised up in. Secondly, the second question, the start. How I get started? It was, like I said, the influence of music comes from my community. I was raised in a community where the great Dennis Brown, Gregory Isaac, Yellowman, you know, it was their spot to hang out. You know, I used to be that kid who they call and say, hey, you know, youth, come here, buy me a pack of cigarette. And I used to run the fastest. So before I go buy the cigarette, I run straight to my house and I tell my mom, Josie will send me out, or Gregory Isaac send me out. And my mom would say, get away from here, you're too lie. Where you go see Gregory Isaac? Because back then those guys were like really like big mega stars. So I was really the guy who actually go out for those people, go buy anything that they needed, you know, for their privilege at the time. And you know, and it's just my little input to get in. Because back then you have to pay your dues. You can't just run in and just say, oh, you know, me an artist and this and that. I knew I have a little talent, but man, I just admire the humbleness in these guys and how these guys are just so humble and so powerful, you know, within music. And back then I was influenced early, but the talent I think come from the Almighty. It comes through my mom. My mom was an excellent gospel singer. She you could hear her from a mile singing, you know, and I think that's where I get that high pitch note and you know, all of that. So, you know, like I said, I was influenced by all those great people and the community itself, you know. So there was always talent shows, you know, talent shows around, and you could always go and, you know, hold the mic before the big star comes in and warm up. Sound system days we're talking about, because that's where that's my era. Back then, you know, sound system were the thing to actually expose your talent to. There was studio, but it was more a controlled environment. You can't just go to a recording studio because you said you're an artist. Who said that? Exactly. Who said you're an artist? You know? So I started out on Romantic, iPower, which is Little John sound. And we used to have a thing called Thursday Night at the Fight. So I went there with my first song called Friday Evening. Friday Evening, the Jackson 5. What a feeling, feel like dancing. And I did that on the answer rhythm. I don't know if you know the answer rhythm. And bust the place. And man, I say, yo, who the youth here? The youth here bad. Yo, bring him up on the mic. And, you know, that's where the whole excitement started from. And, you know, from there it was just history, because I realized that I got my foot in, so I need to do more work. I need to start writing, and I was going to school at the time, you know. So it was me, Tennessee, Barrington, Levy. Back then those guys were stars anyway, because they started singing from school days, you know. They left school, they get out of school from early and start their career. I was still going to school, so I was like the last in the pack to really get out there, you know. So we are from the same community, and we just musically, you know, musically.
All right, pertaining to what you were saying a while ago, coming from the sound system era, coming from that era of King Tubbies and Jammies and Steely and Clevie and thing, do you think that the lack of sound system exposure has changed the reggae and dancehall industry in any way? And what do you think it is between the difference between, say, those foundation producers and the producers today?
Well, it definitely changes. That's question one. It definitely changes. I mean, it does affect it too, because we can see now there is, you know, it gone to the days where people now are just depending on, you know, a little piece of equipment, go into a bathroom and sing something and say, well, they're an artist, you know. But there's no grooming stage. You know, there's no one to tell you if you're doing something right or you're doing something wrong. We used to have to hang out with musicians, just sit there and listen to them play for hours, you know, and then after that you're like, oh my God, these guys are so good, you know. And so when you start singing, someone will tell you, hey, yeah, you're flat, you sound flat. Don't try that, go back again. And, you know, and there's always somebody to tell you what you're doing wrong. Now, these days are different now, because everything comes down to programming, you know, and, you know, the kids are much more vast. The technology, of course, is greater now, but the music doesn't feel the same way, because, you see, now we have one-man band. What you call a one-man band, does one man go in a studio and make a track to his feeling and force it under the popularity and say, hey, you know, this is me and you have to take it, you know. Before you used to have 6-7 guys just jamming a band, they come together, they rehearse a song, and they get each and every individual have a piece of themselves in it. So that's why the music was so powerful, you know, and the message was so clear, because it's a team, it's a teamwork and a team effort. And that's where I think the big changes is now compared to yesteryear and today, you know. However, there is still some talented musicians coming out of school, talented artists who are really contributing positively, you know. And I mentioned Chronix, you know, that's my friend's son, and Chronicle's son. And believe me, I saw him today, and I was just, for the first time in a long time, we haven't really spoke. We just say hi and move by, and he was so honored to meet me today officially and said, well, you know, this I'm a singer, and you know, yo, I grew up, I listen to them money and, you know, and it was such an honor. So to show you him